Before I get this video started, I want to tell you guys what Jean's final request was to be done with her ashes. She wanted them spread out at camp, the place that she said was the happiest time of her life. But I told her, I said, I don't really want to do that because graves are really for the living, not for the dead. That's where you go to remember your grandmother or your father or whoever was buried there, and you can't do that with scattered ashes. So I told her that I would pour her ashes into the ground and bury them, and then I would always know where she was so I could remember her, and she agreed to this. And with that, let's get this video started. This is going to be Gypsy Jean's memorial today. And these are some of the people she knew when she was here. And some she didn't. Some of you guys who remember the Gypsy Jean series I did last year and what happened with her, this is our impromptu memorial service here, which is obviously completely off the cuff. Now, her request, she said this was the best time of her life when she was here, and her request was to be left here. And I carried her ashes from Mississippi all the way up there. It was her last ride this year, but that was her request. The girl is still giving me trouble even from the grave, right? She's still causing me headache. But there's a couple things I can say about her. Like, I don't know a whole lot about her life because I just met her here and I only spent a few months with her. But of those few months, we spent almost every day together. And so I got to know her a little bit, but I don't know a lot of her history. And if any of you out there do know more, well, I'd be interested in hearing it. So she, this is the story she told me. She had an autistic son, and she took care of him till he was 27, till she could get him to be able to live out on his own. And then later on, she did what I did for her mother-in-law, who died from cancer, but it took her 1.5 years. But Jean took care of her. So Jean was, the one thing I saw was she was always giving. She was always worried about everybody else. Are you okay? You watching that video where the old ladies are massaging her? And if you listen close, you'll hear her say, are your hands okay? She's worried about the old lady's hands while she's busy dying. So she did have that. I never did really see her bad side. She had a little bit of hero worship when she was here by her own admission. But from what I gathered from her story, she gave a lot to other people. And she worked as a heavy equipment operator. This is a story she told me. And she said that she would put my videos up in her machine and watch them. She watched myself for 5 years, and that's what she always wanted to do. That's what her heart pulled her to do. But I got the idea that she thought she was working towards some kind of a retirement or something, which she was putting in 70 and 80-hour work weeks. This is the story she tells me, right? And she said that was in Daytona, Florida. And she said, finally, I think there's a real message in her story. And I'm going to get to that here in a sec. But she said finally she had to get to a point where she just didn't care what happened to her anymore. She just didn't care about anything anymore. Somebody offered her a piece of land to stay on out in Arkansas, and she drove out there with her little car. She had her bike, and she put in a camp. She was living in a tent. That's in some of my videos, that camp. And she just didn't care. And then she said that she decided she wanted to come to the Sturgis rally. She'd been into bikes her whole life. Out of her camp, she had a little tent full of bike stuff. She'd always been into bikes, man. And when you look at her bike, she bought it new, you can see it's got her written all over it. It's not like some shiny, pristine bike, but it had Jean written all over it, Jeany. So she decides she's going to go to Sturgis. So she's scared to death, right? She's gotten older. She's become more afraid. This is the story she told me. And she would go to the first town, and she was camping in the little parks. All these little towns will let you camp in the parks. And she'd say, I'm going to go home tomorrow. Then she'd say, no, I'm going to the next one. She'd go to the next one. And then the next one. Finally, she got here. Now, being from Daytona, she'd worked at the motorcycle rallies before, so she knew how to do that. She had a job with a vendor up here. So she goes to work with the vendor up there, and then she meets Half-Ass, wherever he is. He's here right here. She meets Half-Ass here, and he brings her back here because the price is right? Like, our camp's really cheap. So next thing you know, she's camped right next to me, and she don't know it. And then we meet each other. That's why she had a little hero worship. And I think she spent a lot of time just laying around being lazy, and she was afraid to ride her bike up this hill. So whenever we went to town and stuff, we started going together. And I go to the rec center, and we went shopping. We were buying food, and we had a cooler thing here, and we we spent a lot of time together, is what we did. And you can see it in the video. She said this was the best time of her life, right? And she met all the people. And then we were here for like a month and a half last year. A lot of us were. And then, you know, she lives in Arkansas, and I decided I was going to the Bikes, Blues, and Barbecues rally in Rogers, Arkansas. And she only lived a few hours south of there. And we took off. And on the way to the rally, she started to get really sick. She always did look sickly, man, but I'd never met her before. You know, some people just look sickly. And so she started to get really sick. And we went to the rally. I got a friend there. And after the rally, I stayed, and she went home. She said, I'm going to go see a doc. And she called me up a little while later, and she said, it's pancreatic cancer. They give me 3 months to live. I don't think she lasted 3 months. And I said, well, I'll visit you on the way down. And when I did, I ended up staying because I was the only one who could stay. After a while, she needed full time, somebody to be there full time. I had to sleep in the same bedroom at one point and wake up every couple of hours and hit her with morphine. You know, they were giving her, you know, the liquid stuff. But my point on this whole thing is, right, what I see in her story, what really affects me, is that she spent her whole life doing for other people, right? Which was, I mean, I really liked that about her. And then she spent her life doing what she thought she should do. And right at the very end, she followed her own heart. And there was an old friend of mine who once told me, it's a very old philosophy, said, do what you love to do because you truly love to do it and the money will come, right? Some of you may have watched my story where I took off with $500 from California to go to Florida that year, traveled with $500 on blind faith, traveled for 9 months, and ended up back in San Diego with $550. Not that I didn't get low, just that I never starved, and what I needed came to me. So my point being really is that she waited till the end, and as soon as she went to follow her heart, all the pieces fell into place. I fixed her bike. I got it running really beautifully out here. She met all these people, right? She had the best time of her life, and then she fucking died, right? So I think there's a real message there. But we have this plaque. I had this plaque made for her, and I'm going to leave her here in the camp where she claims to have had the best time of her life. She told everybody that. But when you look at the videos, you can see it. She was happy, really happy here, right? After all what she'd done, she finally followed her own calling in her own heart. And that's why I think, personally, that one of the most important things a person can do in this life is learn to think for themselves. Follow your own heart. Maybe if this says to do something different than maybe what everybody else is doing or what they tell you should be doing, follow this. I did that. Jean did that. She did it too late. A lot of people here have done that. So what we're going to do is conclude that, and I'm going to leave Jean here, and she will be here hopefully when we all get back next year.
That's so great.
At least I can do this from the spirit of the forest. And you are still alive. In our hearts.
Now, some of you know, and for those who don't, I made a video series of my time with Gypsy Jean last year. That series probably got the most comments, certainly the last one did, of any video I've ever made in my life. By far. There was no way I could read them all. And I'm going to leave you guys a link to the very first of those stories right here. And also, because I mentioned my story in this video, I'm going to leave you a link to that one right here. And with that, I'll see you guys all in the next video.